Hey guys, Rich here, this is Brickset. You might be wondering why the heck, after the set has now been out for 6 months, I'm now doing a review on the Titanic. Well, today marks the 110-year anniversary of its setting sail from Southampton, and when this video actually drops, it's going to be 110 years since this thing sank. Now you're probably asking as well, hey Rich, you don't know anything about boats. So that's why I've come all the way over to my friend David's house to get a bit of a hand with this one. He is definitely a boat expert. Okay, so here's David. David, first of all, is the president of My Lug All Blocks. David also has a idea set that reached the 10,000 mark. We'll take a look at that at the end of this review. Unfortunately, it didn't make it in, but we're going to have a good look at it anyway because further credentials. Right, qualifications.
Qualified Master Mariner. I've been working at sea for over 22 years. In addition to that, in a former life I was a lieutenant in the Royal New Zealand Naval Reserve.
Now, first of all, give us a bit of a background on the Titanic itself. Can you give me a history on it? Of course, we all know roughly the story, but can you give us a bit of a what happened, a bit of a timeline as to what happened on it?
Well, you couldn't make this stuff up. 110 years ago today, the Titanic sailed from Southampton on her maiden voyage to New York. On the way, as everyone knows, it hit an iceberg on what was relatively calm night. They thought that the vessel was unsinkable or would sustain the flooding that took place, and well, the rest is history. Now,
the size of the boat is obviously the thing about it. It was a monster of a boat. It was huge. It was the biggest thing at the time?
It was the largest ship at the time. It was the Olympic class boats for White Star Line. It was the second of three. The Olympic had been built before the Titanic. Then there was the Titanic, and the third ship in the series was called the Britannic. It had 3 engines. It had 2 engines called triple expansion engines, and it had a third engine which was a steam turbine.
Okay, well look, we're here to look at the Lego build, of course. Take us through the building process, you know, like as far as, you know, opening the boxes, starting to build it. How did you find it?
Well, to be fair, and excuse the pun, it's a Titanic set. It's got about 9,000 parts in it. It comes in a monstrous box. There are 3 sub boxes inside that, so you build 3 distinct sections of the ship. And what the impression I got after I was sort of building it, it's almost like 6 modular buildings. Now, we often see a modular street in many shows and displays, and this set all clips together just like the modular buildings clip together.
Now, as far as the build goes and doing all the details within the ship, did you find that there was enough difference between the sections, you know, to keep you interested? Because like you say, massive build, there looks like there's quite a bit of repetitiveness going on with it, which you can expect that. Okay, yeah, I can take that.
There is a certain element of repetitiveness of a model of this size, and that's sort of given. There's a fairly uniform for all the portholes and windows along the sides of the ships, but it's varied. The bow section's got its own quirks, the stern section's got its own quirks, the mid section is probably the bit that's at the blandest of the 3.
Excellent. Now, so all right, let's have a look at some of the details. Is there any sort of real, like, any particular details that really stand out to you from that?
I'm impressed with the accuracy of the model. It's got a whole lot of features that are quite true to the real Titanic. They've managed to capture in a sort of a relatively micro scale a whole lot of features. Now, Lego is not a particularly brilliant modelling medium, and you've got to make compromises because of the parts that are available and the way that Lego is put together, but I think that this model is reasonably accurate and true to life. If we start at the bow section, you've got 3 anchors, 2 principal anchors, and there's a spare anchor tucked away. There's a couple of cranes and davits. You've got the foremast with the lookouts, then you've got the wheelhouse and your start of the lifeboats. There's a radio room up there in the officers' quarters. As you come aft, there's a little compass platform, some engine room skylights, and down at the stern there's some other vents and cranes and the aft conning position or the mooring bridge, and then you've got the 3 bronze propellers and the large rudder right under the stern.
Now, what about the technique of getting this hull together? I mean, the hull is very sort of subtle angles, and not angles that you normally, I don't know, associate with Lego building, if you know what I mean. Like that's quite a subtle angle coming up there to the front and at the back, the way it pulls in.
Well, yeah, they've captured in the bow area, that's sort of like the flare of the bow. They've captured the shape, and it is a compromise. It's not really true to form, but again, Lego's not a great modelling medium for doing curved surfaces, but they've compromised a wee bit there, and the same in the stern. They've created that as it cuts away underneath the stern as it leads into the propellers.
All right, let's take a look at some of the details around sort of the interior on the deck there as well. So, any sort of details that really stand out to you there?
You can pull this model apart into 3 discrete sections, and where you do that, you get a quite a microscale look into the interior of the vessel, and they've captured all of the different decks. The boilers and the triple expansion engines in particular are captured really, really neatly.
Is it true to scale as far as the number of rooms and things like that? Do you think?
No, I don't think. There is a group of people out there that are known in the modelling world as rivet counters, and they will look at photographs and look at people's models and count all the rivets and count all the portholes and point things
right,
out.
Eh?
Yeah,
people go to that sort of level, do they?
Yes. I'm not going to make any disparaging comments on it, but it is what it is. And because of, again, the compromise that you have to come up with the Lego model, there isn't the same number of portholes or windows, and they're not at the right spacings, and the grand staircase is not true to the right position in the hull. But again, it's a Lego Titanic.
I hear you. Yeah. So the grand staircase, that's one of the details from the interiors, obviously?
Yes.
You like it? You thought it was a good detail?
Once you figured out that this is what it was, yes, it's there. There's an intricate clock at the top of the grand staircase, and this model is actually a printed compass, so it's got a nautical compass instead of a clock face, and there's different grades of cabins, and different colours are used throughout to indicate the first class,
different classes. Okay, I hear. Because if I remember, I'm thinking to the movie, of course, and you sort of remember the downstairs or the very bottom was sort of quite rough and
Spartan, and
so, yeah. Does it capture that in there?
To a certain
degree.
You certainly can see that there's sort of plusher colours are coming through when you get to the
higher class.
Higher class.
Yeah. The engines. Tell me a bit about these engines.
All right. Well, the engines in the Titanic were called triple expansion engines, and I'll just touch on the detail there. Steam, as it goes into the engine, is under very high pressure and high temperature. Then the size of the cylinders in a triple expansion steam go from high pressure, intermediate, and low pressure. In the triple expansion engines in this Lego model, all the cylinders are the same size, and that's just, again, a compromise because of the parts.
So having a look at these lifeboats, tell me, have we got the right number of lifeboats according to the real thing?
No, it doesn't, and that surprised me. There's a discussion about not having enough lifeboats, but the Titanic actually had more lifeboats than the regulations stipulated. A vessel of this size in 1912 was only required to have 16 lifeboats. The Titanic actually had 20, so they'd put extra lifeboats on more than the regulations required. The general feeling of part of the design is that this vessel would survive a catastrophic event long enough for another ship to come and take the passengers. So the lifeboats were more or less going to be ferrying passengers to a rescuing ship rather than a full abandonment all at once. But the Lego Titanic doesn't have 20 lifeboats. It only came with 18, and I really can't figure out why.
There's space for it up there for the other two as well.
There's 2 types of lifeboats. The real Titanic had 2 emergency cutters up in the bridge area, and then they had the rest of the lifeboats down the side, and they had these 4 lifeboats called collapsibles. Now these were like concertina. They could be folded down and stored away. Don't think that the collapsible lifeboats were inferior, because one of the collapsible lifeboats actually was still floating 3 months after the event in the Atlantic.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, scale. Overall scale.
It's built at a scale of 1 to 200, and it's built to the same scale as the architecture Statue of Liberty.
I guess that sort of gives, that'll help people gauge the actual size of, the Titanic itself when you can compare it to a monument that you can actually see and visit these days as well. Now let's touch on these flags.
The set came with 3 flags as part of this soft plastic pre-cut flags. In the bow there is a flag known as a pilot jack, which is a Union flag, or the Union Jack, surrounded by a white border. It would only be flown if the vessel was tied up alongside or at anchor. Up on the foremast is the American ensign, and true to the time, the American ensign in 1912 only had 46 stars, and this flag that Lego have produced has 46 stars as well.
They've got the right detail in there.
And down at the stern is the blue ensign. Now, the interesting feature about British ships is that they have 3 distinctive of coloured ensigns. If it's a merchant ship, it would be a red ensign. If it was a naval vessel, it would be the white ensign. But a merchant ship that is commanded by an officer of the Royal Naval Reserve is entitled to fly a blue ensign. Captain Smith of the Titanic was a commander in the Royal Naval Reserve, and this model is flying the blue ensign. The other two flags that I've bought from a third party, one is the White Star house flag, which is a red burgee swallowtail with a white star in it. And there's another pennant which is called the Royal Mail Pennant. The RMS of the RMS Titanic stands for Royal Mail Steamer. I think that those two flags might have been omitted because of licensing issues.
Now, a couple of details that I've noticed on here that I think are fantastic are the use of these little telephone handles or whatever you call them
as vents. These would
the
be
vents.
vents.
Yeah. I think they look. I think that's quite cool because they obviously have to think about them under the deck, as well as poking up.
Yeah. Now these vents would have been rotatable, so they would have been able to turn the cowling to face the wind to direct the air into the compartment. But
interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that's what they were. I always wondered what they were. And as well, those other pieces as well, those 1x2 slope sort of things with the vents in them as well to be used as the steps around the deck there as well.
The cheese graters.
Yeah, the cheese graters. Yeah. I think that looks great.
That was the best part usage in some areas of the model that you can only see half of it, and in a couple of instances you can see the full part. The other thing is they've used 1x2 rail.
Oh, the 1x2 with the bar hanging off the side of it. Yep.
And it paired up with a 1x2 rail, and it becomes this little bench seat.
Interesting.
And it's clipped in using the clip underneath.
That is really, really clever. That is really, really clever. So is it just these two axles that go in and hold it together?
Each of the modules have clips and Technic axles, and then going down through the middle are these sort of pins that go vertically down that hold it all together. The other feature that I discovered is that you can store this model in its original box. So the three sections sit very nicely into the three sub boxes of the model as it comes from Lego. That is
super handy. All right, well look, we'd be amiss if we didn't talk about your ideas submission as well. So tell us a bit about that.
For a long period of my career I've been a nautical lecturer, so I built the Queen Victoria, which is a Cunard passenger ship, and it evolved through time, and someone saw it and liked it and said, you should put this on Lego Ideas. So I put it on Lego Ideas. My model travelled on the Queen Victoria.
Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't. It did.
But it did, yeah.
And it got 10,000 votes, but unfortunately, again, probably due to licensing issues, the model wasn't selected, so it's been not approved.
Awesome. Hey, look, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
No, thank you.
No, this is awesome.